This modern microchip circuit board carries a specific intellectual signature. If you trace its design logic backward through history, you arrive at this exact spot on the ancient Aegean coast. Every smartphone, every satellite, and every line of code relies on a way of thinking that was born here. Before the Ionian rise, civilizations like Egypt and Mesopotamia possessed advanced mathematics and astronomy, but they applied those tools to serve absolute authority. In these cultures, the king was often a god, and every natural phenomenon, from a flood to an eclipse, was explained as an expression of divine will. There was no room for why, when the answer was always because the gods willed it. This map shows the eastern Aegean coast, the home of 12 independent city-states, known as the Pan-Ionian League. They occupied a unique geographic and political niche, physically removed from the centralizing power of the Eastern empires. Because they lacked a central pharaoh or king to dictate their economy, these cities thrived on the coastal trade routes shown here. They became wealthy maritime hubs, acting as a filter between the old civilizations of the East and the emerging markets of the West. This ruined theater at Miletus hints at the massive scale of that wealth. Miletus became a center for scientific inquiry, while nearby Ephesus grew into a cultural powerhouse, and Samos specialized in the mathematics of engineering. This decentralized power and the resulting trade wealth bought the Ionian citizens something rare: the leisure time required for deep, sustained innovation. For the first time, a critical mass of people had the freedom to stop merely surviving and start investigating how the world actually worked. Thales of Miletus is often depicted holding this geometric scroll. He led a rebellion against the supernatural, proposing that the universe could be understood through logos, the rational mind. He believed that nature followed consistent rules that humans could calculate and predict. At his school in Miletus, he and his students operated on a radical new premise: nothing comes from nothing. They began looking for the Arche, the single natural substance that forms the foundation of all things, shifting the focus from the whims of deities to the properties of matter. Thales proved the predictive power of this logic on May 28, 585 BC. By calculating the movements of the heavens, he predicted a solar eclipse, plunging the battlefield of the Lydians and Medes into darkness. The soldiers were so stunned by the event that they immediately stopped fighting and negotiated for peace. He applied this same logic to the Great Pyramid. While others saw a monument to divine kingship, Thales saw a geometric problem. He realized he could calculate the pyramid's exact height by simply measuring its shadow at the precise moment his own shadow matched his height. Thales' most important legacy wasn't a specific calculation, but a new kind of relationship between teacher and student. His student, Anaximander, was encouraged to openly criticize Thales' ideas and propose his own theories, a level of intellectual freedom that was virtually non-existent in the centralized empires of the time. This culture of public skepticism and open critique established the earliest precedent for what we now recognize as the scientific community. It moved knowledge out of the temple and into a marketplace where ideas had to survive the scrutiny of others to be considered true. The Ionians didn't just leave their logic in the classroom, they weaponized it to manipulate their physical environment. They were the first to systematically apply abstract mathematics to large-scale engineering problems. When you tilt up this solitary column, you're looking at the remnants of the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. Building a structure this massive required a standardized system of mathematics and architectural planning that allowed engineers to move from guesswork to precise, repeatable results. This precision reached peak in the tunnel of Eupalinonis on Samos. Two teams of workers dug from opposite sides of a mountain, and, guided by nothing but geometric calculations, they met perfectly in the middle. It was an engineering feat that remained unmatched for centuries. This analytical mindset eventually spread to every field of study. Herodotus, whose bust you see here, applied these principles to the past. He was the first to record history by investigating eyewitness accounts and physical evidence, purposefully ignoring myths of divine intervention. Hippocrates did the same for the human body. He rejected the idea that disease was a divine curse, instead using logical observation to prove that sickness was the result of natural causes, diet, and the environment. The Ionian experience reveals a clear pattern. When a society protects the freedom to ask questions and provides the wealth to explore the answers, technological breakthroughs become inevitable. By the 6th century BC, the Persian Empire, a centralized military superpower, expanded westward, swallowing Anatolia and pressing against the Ionian coast. The Persians choked the economy, severing trade lines to the Black Sea and installing tyrants to turn the free cities into vassals. This economic strangulation, combined with the loss of their democratic freedoms, eventually triggered the Ionian Revolt. The cities gathered their forces to push back against the Persian-backed dictators and reclaim their autonomy. But the very independence that had fostered their intellectual brilliance now became a military liability. The 12 city-states of the Pan-Ionian League were so decentralized and competitive that they could not agree on a single leader or a unified strategy. The Persian military exploited these internal divisions, crushing the revolt city by city. The campaign ended in the total destruction of Miletus, with its inhabitants killed or enslaved and its libraries burned to the ground. This history illustrates the specific vulnerability of the Ionian model. The decentralized competition, ideal for generating new ideas, was unable to produce the cohesive military force needed to survive a centralized superpower. Although the cities were destroyed, the Ionian way of thinking survived. Their commitment to rational inquiry and the scientific method migrated to Athens, then to Alexandria, eventually providing the foundations for the modern world. There was a biological survival as well. Modern DNA analysis shows the people of the Aegean coast today, in Turkey and Greece, carry the genetic signature of those ancient Ionians. They were not wiped out, they were absorbed into the civilizations that followed. When we see an ancient star chart morph into lines of modern AI code, we are looking at a single lineage of logic. It is the conviction that the universe is not a series of miracles, but a system of discoverable, codifiable laws. To help us continue exploring the history behind our modern world, please like and share this video and subscribe to the channel. Ionia's story demonstrates that innovation is not a lucky accident, but a direct result of social conditions. Where power is decentralized and inquiry is protected, humanity can invent the future. Where those freedoms are lost, the progress of science stops.